With so much content out there, how do you filter through all the noise and cut straight to the value? What has become very apparent is that the best way to learn is to surround yourself with those you aspire to be. But you can't just watch what they do. At some point, you have to turn it into an action. Knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power. On this podcast, you will go on a journey as we speak to people who are making a difference in their industries, and people who, if we listen to closely and take action, can turn you into who you want to be. My name is Mark Sclair, and this is Your Turning Point. With over 25 years of experience in learning and development, Andrew is a passionate and award-winning professional who helps people and organisations achieve their full potential. Working as a head and VP of learning to companies such as Etihad Airways, Hilton Worldwide, and shaya, who had brands such as Cheesecake Factory and Boots, he has advised and developed teams from operations to C-suite. Andrew stands out from a typical L&D because before he got into that role, he was doing the jobs the people he develops struggle with, and that is extremely valuable.
The best pilot or the best engineer or the best physicist doesn't make the best leader. Leadership is actually it's a whole skill set on its own.
If you've got a team of 10, 15, 20 people, that's 20 problems you've got to face every single day.
Typically, there's kind of 5 levels of management within most businesses. And literally history is littered with those disasters where leaders basically just think they're above the law. Because when I'm forcing them to do something, the impact is minimal. They'll never forget how you make them feel. Leadership for me is about creating the safety.
Andrew, welcome to Turning Point.
Mr. Mark, it's nice to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Great. Well, I want to get into this straight away. What I want to speak about today is the learning journey and the development that people go on. But what I tend to find with a lot of companies and individuals when I speak about this is people say it's the responsibility of the business. And then people say it's the responsibility of the employee to make sure that people are learning. So what are your thoughts on this? How would you break that up?
I think the first thing I would say is it's all about experience.
Okay.
So I'm a huge believer in we're all very unique. So there's arguably 9 billion people on the planet, and those 9 billion people are every single one of us is a combination of experiences. So the more that we expose our teams to experience, or the more that we expose ourselves to experience as employees, the more impactful we tend to be. What I tend to find in my career, I'm the veteran of 42 sort of talent reviews now. So, that we have these what we call a talent executive committee meeting. So I'm typically sitting with the CEO or with level 1 leaders in massive organizations. And I've worked for some huge organizations around the world. We're having a conversation. And in those conversations, we're talking about whether Mark has potential. Maybe he's got, how mobile is he? Could he kind of grow with the new organisation? And a lot of people are saying, yes, Mark he's an absolutely amazing, everyone's nodding. And then someone, like a lone voice in the room, will kind of go, yes, yes. But if we promote Mark, who's going to do Mark's job? And I think that's a real kicker, because and then of course everyone kind of goes, I agree. Mark ends up staying where he is. He's not kind of growing. The other thing I hear repeatedly in those meetings is that there's not enough breadth at the beginning of careers. So what tends to happen is that people specialise too early, and they have a lot of, obviously, depth in a particular discipline. And then as they get more senior within organisations, the big stopper is that because they're so specialised in finance, or they're so specialised in recruitment, or they're so specialised in project management, they get stuck and they can't kind of take that final step into that more kind of broader view. So, and it's a hard one, because I have two children who are working, and I'm always saying to them, it's try to get the breadth of experience. So I think if you can, as an employee, get different experiences, and I have definitely benefited from that in my career. It was not a plan. There was no plan when I went to work.
Okay.
But what I have been very fortunate in is doing lots of different jobs. I can cite 2 really good examples where I felt really made a massive difference for me in my career. I think the first one was when I started working in hotels, and because I worked in very small hotels. When I was a hotel general manager from a relatively early age, when I worked in hotels, because I worked in very small hotels at the beginning, we're talking 30, 40 bedrooms. Ultimately, I was running, 1,000 bedroom hotels, but at the beginning of my life, it was more 30 bedroom hotels. And the benefit of working in a 30 bedroom hotel is that you get exposure to everything, how the business runs, every single part of it, from like trying to manage the margin to, accommodate checking in, checking out, all the F&B operations, everything was it's done by a very, very small team. So it's quite hard. When you then move into much bigger hotels, you then end up specialising as front of house or F&B or housekeeping or whatever it might be. So therefore, you lose some of your edge as an employee. If you have broad experience like I did, as I said, it was more by chance than by planning. It makes a difference. Then the other thing, later in my career, when I ran sort of very big restaurants, that was another major moment for me, and I think it was to the credit of my employer at the time, because I was appointed to run, at the time, this is 98, one of the biggest, busiest restaurants in the world. We were serving 10,000 meals a day.
Okay.
So arguably I had good caliber F&B experience, and I was going to run a very, very big restaurant with hundreds of waiters and dubs and kitchen teams and bussers and door hosts, which was fascinating. But they insisted that I learned all of the jobs in the restaurant.
Okay.
And that's really useful. Now, I think at the time I was thinking, oh, this is a waste of my time. But actually, in reality, it's very good, because if you learn the day-to-day operations of a door host, or you learn the day-to-day operations of a busser or a bar back or of a dub or an expediter, or you're working the broiler or fry, actually you start to get a bit of a flavour of how that job works.
Yeah.
And it cuts two ways. First of all, it means that when you're delegating to those team members and you're trying to develop those team members from a leadership perspective, you have a bit of a flavour of how long it takes to learn that job, which I think is really important. But secondly, you get a flavour for, is the team member performing well, but are they taking advantage? Because if you don't know how to bus a table and how fast to bus a table and how fast it can be done, and you don't know some of the nuances of door hosting or running a table list, then actually it's very, very hard. And what I see latter part of my career is that because people have specialised, and because people seem to feel that doing those more entry-level jobs is sort of beneath them, they tend to kind of put themselves at a major disadvantage in the latter part of their career. So I think everyone has responsibility for developing people. Ultimately, I think it's the team member wants to do something, and I think that's really where it kind of cuts. I mean, I talk about the motivation of humans at work a lot. A lot of people ask me, how do you get team members motivated? And actually, in what I would say, there's kind of four levels of motivation for me. There's, Mark's desire to want to do something.
Yeah.
There's Andrew's desire to make Mark do something.
Okay.
Which is like Mark must do this.
Yeah.
And I think they're the outliers, because those two, first of all, Mark wanting to do something is a personal decision, and I don't think I can't get inside his head, nor would I want to. So I don't really understand what Mark's motivations are. So it's kind of off the table. I also feel that the easiest route and the most ineffective and the most expensive route is just forcing Mark to do things. Because when I'm forcing him to do something, the impact is minimal.
Yeah.
So it kind of leaves me with my kind of what I call my playing field, really, which is my can and my should. So I like to talk about making it easy for Mark to make the right choices and showing him the opportunities that are available to him, and of course promoting why it might be beneficial for Mark to do that.
Yeah.
So when you've got those kind of four areas, that the want and the must tend to be personal decisions. Must being ineffective, want being very, very effective. Because if Mark wants to do something, it's almost impossible to stop him, right? The area that gets the most traction for me, and I've worked on pretty much every continent around the world, worked with enormous teams. The best traction you get is in the space of which making it easy. for Mark to get access to it, and of course, talking about why Mark should do it. That's a long answer for a very short question.
No, but I think that shows how complex it is really within a business, and it does take that journey, because you're telling me to do something, okay, but a lot of people, they don't paint the picture of what the outcome's going to be. So I think as long as somebody gets that told to them, like, okay, look, this is going to be a lot of, as they say, heavy lifting at the moment, yeah, to use those fancy terms. If there's something at the end of it and I can see something, and I think as well, me personally, if I can see some quick wins early on with people that I'm working with, if I'm selling that story, they start to believe it. And if they know that I'm coming from a good place as well, as a person that wants to take them on the journey, rather than just use them for my own accord to drive my career. But that all comes at the beginning, doesn't it? Like getting them to trust you and believe, yeah, that you've got their best interests at heart. Yeah.
It was. You know, there's a couple of things that spring to mind when you were speaking then, Mark. And the first one is that people, you know, they'll forget what you did, they'll forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you make them feel.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. I had this really interesting situation a couple of years ago. I picked up some award somewhere, and it was on LinkedIn, and it was really fascinating because I got this message from a lady who'd worked in my team when I was 18.
Okay.
So I was, you know, I was kind of working in pubs and restaurants and hotels, you know, from about 16. Well, actually younger than 16, but let's not go there. But literally, I was completely stunned because this lady kind of comes out of the blue in LinkedIn. She sort of says, "Oh, Stotts, you know,
Yeah.
wow, it's amazing, you know, such a well-deserved, you know, award, blah, 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 blah." And I was obviously very, very grateful, but I couldn't really kind of place her.
No.
Couldn't really work out where I met her, right? Her CV was kind of quite vague. She was obviously a bit older than me, even now. So I kind of went back to her and I said, "Oh, wow, you know, thanks for your kind words, and that's really generous. You know, where did we connect?"
Yeah.
Right? And she says, "Oh, you were called Mr. S at the time, and I was kind of a waitress working in your team, and a place called Hemel Hempstead in the UK." And I just went, I said, whoa, hang on a second, how the heck could you even remember me? Because I'm 58 now, right? So that's 40 years ago, right? I was working with you 40 years ago, and a lot of it. She goes, "Well, the first thing is, it sounds like I'm blowing sort of, you know, hot air at my bottom here. And that's not my intention by telling you the story. But the reality is that," she says, "it's how you made me feel. It's how you made the team feel. Because actually most people, most, you know, leaders don't respect the team. They don't really listen to the team. They don't really, you know, ask questions of the team. They don't remember the team. You know, so if you make them feel good, they tend to sort of buy into you, right? And if you just treat them like they're some sort of commodity, they're not going to buy into you. I always say, you know, very simplest simple example, at the highest level, there's two types of managers. Let's keep leadership out of it. But there's two types of managers. There's the manager when, you know, excuse the language, but the shit's hitting the fan,
Yeah.
right? And the manager is then going to Mark and saying, "Mark, can you stay back because this shit's happened and we've got to deal with this problem," right? And Mark says, "Oh, I'm washing my hair, or I've got to go and pick up my kids, or I've got to go to the dentist,
Or it's not my job.
It's not my job,"
Yeah.
right? And that's because there's no respect between Mark and the manager, right? Or there's basically the other manager who, you know, the shit's happening and Mark's actually storming into the conversation. You know, how do we help you? What can we do to help?
Yeah.
You know, let's fix this together, right? And that's the real test. I mean, the amount of managers in my career who I've met who said, "I don't get it, Andrew," and I try and ask them to do things, and they're going home washing their hair or they're going out with their kids or whatever, which are legitimate arguments. You know, I'm sure they are going out with their kids and maybe washing their hair, but the reality is that's not what they're saying. They're saying that you don't look after me, therefore I'm not going to look after you. You know, it's a symbiotic relationship. I mean, the idea, just because you're a leader or a manager, no one gives you a crown, right? No one gives you like some kind of like, you know, put a hat on and you suddenly become this, you know, this super being. You have to be in amongst it with your team. You have to listen to them. You have to, you know, ask them questions. You have to, and I think the other big thing is make them feel safe.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So I think moving on to leadership, really, it's definitely something which I want to talk about because there's a lot of people that get promoted, like you said, to a manager. Like we know there's a difference between a manager and a leader, okay? And for me, they either don't get the support, or they just get frustrated with what's going on, they end up leaving, or they become successful with it because they've just got on with it and they've got this ability to be able to do it. But what is it that you see that works within businesses that they can go on that journey where they go from my experience as a salesperson to then take on a leadership role?
Okay, so the easiest way of explaining it is I would say typically there's kind of 5 levels of management within most businesses. There's entry level, and then you have basic supervision, then you have manager level, then you have like a senior manager level, and then you have an executive level kind of one within organizations. And the best thing to do is to start people, identify where they are talented, they're engaged, and having some sort of metrics for actually understanding what makes Mark successful. And that might just be the fact that is he turning up regularly? Is he not taking a lot of sick days? Is he hitting the brand standards for what he's being asked to do? Is he getting loads of really good feedback from guests, members, passengers, whatever it is? So I think they're really, really important. And actually, when we've identified Mark as talented, we should be then almost putting him into a supervision training session before he becomes a supervisor. Because I think the worst thing is that we then promote Mark because he's the best at his job, he's the best personal trainer, or he's the best receptionist, or he's the best, I don't know, chef or whatever. He really loves that, but he can't make the jump between being a great chef or being a great receptionist or being a great, I don't know, waiter without having some sort of like training. Yeah. And it's not, I don't think any business is unique here. I was very privileged to interview the head of NASA.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, and that was a kind of real turning point for me because he said to me, Stotts, it's fascinating. He got up at 4 a.m. to do this interview with me, and he said it's just everyone thinks that NASA has it kind of solved, right? But he said we don't have an issue as far as recruiting people because I don't know whether you do. So someone says, Mark, come and work for NASA. If someone taps me on the shoulder and says, Stotts, there's a job at NASA for you in learning and development or HR, I'd be like, hey, where's my ticket? Yeah. I'm not going to be consulting anyone. So they haven't got an issue with, attracting the world's greatest talent, the best pilots and the best engineers and the mathematicians and scientists. So I think that's really important. He said the problem is that the best pilot or the best engineer or the best physicist doesn't make the best leader. Leadership is actually it's a whole skill set on its own. Yeah. Just because you're a good mathematician. And the real problem is, and then he kind of goes on, and I love this because what he said next was deeply shocking, but at the same time was actually it really kind of landed the message. And he said, and unfortunately, in our organization, we are absolutely at the edge of science. So we have this nasty habit of killing people. Yeah, and when we kill people, we don't kill them and there's like a body. We kill them and they're atomized, right? So there's not one single atom that can be identified of that person. They're just completely misted, let's put it that way. So he said that's a major issue. He said, but whenever we then investigate why that person was killed, we always find the same reason. And that reason is that the team member doesn't have the confidence to challenge the manager's decision, right? Because so they're seeing Mark making a mistake. Mark is like a world famous mathematician. He's a world famous physicist. He's the world's recognized as the world's #1 pilot. Yeah. So Andrew's looking at Mark going, oh gosh, I don't think Mark's doing it right. Yeah. But Mark's like, the world's greatest mathematician. Yeah. Yeah. So therefore, if I challenge Mark, he's, so actually, so Mark might respond to me and say, I'm the world's greatest mathematician, right? So now, yeah, fair enough. But actually, Mark's wrong. So leadership for me is about creating the safety. It's about, do we make it safe enough for Andrew to go to Mark and say, actually, Mark, I think you've done that wrong. You've done that calculation wrong. And that's where disaster happens because people don't feel safe enough to then challenge Mark. Yeah. Right. And that's a really interesting thing. So how do you make people feel safe? How do you give them the experience where they can give you the bad news as quickly as possible? They can kind of like challenge stuff. Because actually that's also how people learn, right? So if I don't agree with something and I'm really not sure about something, actually helping me to understand it. If I come to you and say, I don't get that, Mark. That number doesn't look right to me. Mark needs to be able to then sit down and say, that's fine, great challenge. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Let's go through it together. Let's work the calculation together and get to where we need to get to, right? But too often leaders don't do that. They go, I am the leader. I've got 40 years of experience doing this. Don't tell me how to do my job, and then the disaster happens. And literally history is littered with those disasters where leaders basically just think they're above the law. They think they're above the science. They think they're above the people that they're leading, and that's not really the case. So it's back to my my opening comment on this little session, which is really is the experience that we're offering other people.
Yeah.
So how are we giving them an experience where they feel safe?
Yeah. So I think with that, going back to one of your first points as well, which was, and it's very interesting because I've seen people that just stay in the same position and they never get promoted because they're that good at their job. Who's going to fill that seat? And then what happens is, if they are lucky enough to get a promotion, if they think it's a positive thing anyway, to get this promotion, and all of a sudden they're leading a team, their numbers are down, and their management forces them to then take on a number for themselves as well. Okay, but what made them a great salesperson, as if we use this example, is they're very themselves focused. They're out there, they're looking after clients, but that's their thing. Like, they're out to hit their number, and nothing else is going to stop that. So now all of a sudden they've got this team who that person is relying on to hit their number, and they've got a number to hit as well. So then a lead comes in, they don't give it over to their team, to the guy in the team, because he doesn't trust him, doesn't think he can get the deal done. So he takes on the deal, closes the deal, and this happens constantly. And they just weren't fit to be a leader in the first place. But what I feel happens is, I feel, and we can discuss this please, is it's a social pressure of, I can't be a salesperson for the rest of my life. I have to have some sort of promotion to show everybody that, I'm a manager, or I've got this higher job title or something like that. And they walk around and I've got this job title, but they're not happy doing that. If you've got a number to hit and you're an individual salesperson, you do your number, you put your head down at night, you go to sleep. That is it. As you know, you need to lead people. If you've got a team of 10, 15, 20 people, that's 20 problems you've got to face every single day.
Yeah.
And that is a whole other type of problem. And people just cannot take that. And then they try to lead by example, by closing the deal themselves. And where does that get you? Because the person doesn't even learn. So let me lead with this, and I'll show you how it's done. But where the person isn't learning there.
No, it's fun. I think that's what you're describing, Mark, is it literally happens in every profession. Every profession I've ever worked in, there's always going to be a challenge there. And my kind of great bit of advice, from that kind of, the white straight. I mean, the other thing I would like to say here, I think I have a major advantage in life because of I'm British. Some people might hold that against me, but I'm British, I'm white, I'm straight, I'm old, and therefore I kind of have a bit of a head start on most people. I think it's a significant head start in life.
I'd like to interject to that though.
Yeah.
Okay, because what you'll see, and you'll notice yourself, you've come over to the Middle East, okay? You're from the UK, maybe you've had experience in other countries, but the Middle East is the first time you've had this experience, yeah? All of a sudden you've got all different nationalities, all different cultures, all different people to deal with. You were amazing in England. You were amazing in America. The Middle East is completely different. And all of these people that come here that go, hey, I'm British and I'm going to be a success, they fall very, very quickly. So I don't think that you've got this head start just because you're British. I think you've got this head start because you've been able to adapt to your surroundings and be open to other people and not just go, this is how we're doing it and that's it. When I came here 16 years ago, I realized very, very quickly that if I did anything like I did in the UK, I'll be gone very, very quickly. Things take time. It's all about relationships. You've got to sit with people. So I'd say that is your head start, really, that you actually understand and want to work with people in that way.
Yeah, I mean, but I will say I have my kind of 4 values, and we've sort of touched on it discreetly earlier, but I will say, it's just leading with mega respect. Because I think that's really important. I was actually having a conversation last night because I can be quite a challenging person.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't know in my life I've never expected anyone to earn my respect. So I give my respect 100% to everybody. It's dangerously easy to lose my respect. You can really lose it fast, because if you think that by me being respectful makes me a soft touch, then you're in dangerous water, because I have got zero patience for that. So I lead with massive respect at the beginning. I try to, it's a very sort of Coveyism, but seeking to understand before you seek to be understood. I think that's really important. So the more that you can kind of ask questions and kind of get your head around what's happening, because often when I see people, I mean, I've lived in the region for a similar period to you, and when I first came here, you can see where some of the challenges are. It doesn't matter, to be fair, it doesn't matter if you're working in Russia or you're working in China or you're working in Australia. When you go into the business for the first time, you often see where the problems are. You think, I can fix that. That's really easy. But the reality is that so can everyone else in the business see where the problems are. That's not the skill. The skill isn't going, there's a problem there and I'm going to fix it. The skill is actually having the relationships, actually understanding and being able to explain how we can do it together as a team. That's where the real kind of challenge is. So you've got that definitely respecting. You've definitely got that, that literally, seeking to understand. So I call it my herd piece. Definitely that comes out of really asking great questions. I spend a lot of time trying to get my teams to be a lot better at asking questions, and then the final one is just remembering people, because I think that's the human connection. Because when you remember a little bit about somebody, it makes a massive difference. It really does make a big difference. And that can obviously be their name, but it's much better if you sort of like link back to something else. And just being kind of like, anticipating what their need is before. So even like this, this week, I'll give you a real example for you and me. So I, beginning of the week, I knew that it was in my diary to do this session. So I'm, beginning of the week, first thing on Monday, I'm kind of, we're still good for Friday. Yeah, we're good for Friday. Fantastic. Then I've got big events going on in my life, weddings and stuff yesterday. So then I kind of go to, this morning, just wake up, Mark, make him, it's just sort of making him feel comfortable in that situation. Because if you don't hear from me, then you're thinking, oh gosh. But I tend to do that, I'm like on it, if it makes sense. Just kind of, because I know what it's like, when you're trying to organise people, it's really, really difficult. So just sending a little bit of a message in, saying, hi, how's it going? I have this I tend to, which probably makes you feel uncomfortable, I'm not sure.
Go on.
I have this massive use of the heart emoji. So I use heart emojis everywhere, which is actually very interesting. So if you look at my phone and you look at my kind of WhatsApp feed or LinkedIn feed, you see 1 trillion hearts all over it. And that's because it's just it's a really great message. My wife gets, she used to get really upset with me. She goes, you can't send hearts to particularly to ladies. It's a nightmare. But I'm like going, yeah, you can, because it's trying to keep it human, trying to connect at a human level. So, it's very sweet of you to say that I have, it is relationships. It is that's what makes the world tick, really.
So I think what came to mind there as well is this phrase that I use all the time is SW3N. Some will get it, some won't. So what? Next. If you're being authentic to who you are, not everybody's going to get that, and that's okay. We know who we want to work with, we know who we want to be around. But there's one thing that I'd prefer is that I have a community of people that I work with and have friends with because I've stayed to who to true I am, rather than trying to fake it to make it or fake it to get somewhere else. We get found out in the end with that. So if somebody says, well, that's a little bit weird what you're doing, that's what I am. I've got a picture of a Game Boy up here, like I love stuff like that. That reminds me of my childhood right there.
Yeah.
And I want to keep that with me rather than trying to put things in the show or trying to put things out there where it's to please other people rather than staying true to myself.
Yeah, it's awesome you said that, because when you were speaking, I just immediately went to I have this, I worked with a guy called Alan Layton early part of my career, and Alan was the chairman of Asda, big supermarket chain in the UK and the US. He was the chairman of the Royal Mail for a while, before the kind of troubles.
The scandal,
before the
Wow.
scandal. He was chairman of the Royal Mail. He was the chairman of Leeds United Football Club, big kind of Leeds fan, and he was like the chairman of the Royal Bank of Scotland. And he was all in the same job, all at the same time, because these people have multiple kind of like chairmanships, and he was also the chairman of an organisation that I was working for at the time, which was quite fascinating. So I got a lot of kind of close exposure to Alan at a very young age in my career, which is also very interesting. And he always said to me, he goes, "Stop, you know what? there's three types of people in the world. There is what we call the, we talk about the embracers. Yeah, so they're gonna just embrace you straight away. They're gonna just love you, right? There's gonna be this big population, but about 60% who are just accepting you for what you are, because they've got other commitments. They're kind of distracted, and then you're gonna have a good 20% who are going to reject you starts. Yeah, and actually, what most people tend to do is that they try to courtesize the rejectors, right? They try to get rid of them in their lives, and because Mark doesn't like me, so therefore I'm going to just ostracize him, not going to engage with him, halas. And actually, that's the biggest mistake you can make, because what you're much better off doing is actually running towards the people who really don't like you and actually trying to understand them. Because if you understand them, what you're actually inadvertently doing is they may just be idiots and they need to go, right?
Yeah.
But actually, it's just perhaps they're not understood themselves and they need a bit more of clarity. If you can win the rejector, if you can win someone who's really out for you and make them into a promoter, an embracer of you, then actually what you do inadvertently is you tackle the big population who are on the fence. Because they're kind of watching, because the ones on the fence think, oh, I think Andrew's a bit of a knob, but the reality is I wouldn't want to tell him that, so I'll just keep it to myself.
Yeah.
Right? There's some people who will actually say, Andrew, you're a knob, right? So if I kind of work hard on the open criticizer, what I'm actually doing is I'm then sort of answering a lot of the questions, because some people automatically will love you, of course, and thank you. I'm sure that no one exists in my world, but if you do, if people do actually like me just for who I am at face value, then fantastic, But the reality is not to get too caught up in it. But it is absolutely, apart from my recent boss, I have a very, very, very famous boss at the moment, and I was having a conversation when I was trying to get my head around the business recently, the new business I'm working in, and he was the first person in my entire career who sort of made me think a little bit, because we were talking about the importance of relationships, and he was saying, absolutely, completely get your story. I could love it. I'm loving the passion, the enthusiasm. It's all about relationships until it's about how much it costs.
Yeah.
How much I'm prepared to sell it. How much I'm prepared to sell it to you for, because at the end of the day, I have my country's interest at heart.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, we talk about stretching the value in the barrel, and so for me, it's all about making sure that every barrel gets the right amount of a cent. Yeah. So it's because he sort of followed up and said, and to be honest with you, even if I don't like Mark, and I don't like Mark and I really like Andrew, if Mark is prepared to pay like a cent on the dollar more than Andrew, then Mark gets the deal. Right?
Is that what he thinks? Yeah. Yeah.
so it's kind of like, wow, that's interesting. Yeah. So he said, you're not going to get in the room to have that that conversation unless you have a great relationship. But at the same time, money, unfortunately, is the harsh reality of all of our existences. You can't be the nice guy all the time. Anyway.
No, and I think that's a great position to go into now, because I think there's a lot of people who are purely learning department and they love to develop people and inspire people and help people. Okay, and I speak with those people all day long. They're part of HR, yeah, and then they come up with this idea, but they've got to get it signed off in many regards. It's got to be proven that it can actually return some money to the company, like you're saying, on the cent on the barrel. Okay, that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. So how can people listening to this now, either whether they're trying to pitch to HR to help them or help HR pitch it upwards, what can they be saying to prove that actually this learning is important and it's not an immediate result, but things come because of it?
I think if you're selling something to me, the first thing I think as an L&D professional, as an HR professional, then I'm probably not the right person to be talking to, genuinely speaking, because I probably have a vested interest in something else I'd like to do. Right.
Okay.
So I think 99% of people who come in, they really have no, well, this is another conversation, but they don't really care about what I need, but they're more interested in I probably have an agenda as the L&D professional in a business around the world. It doesn't matter where it is. I probably have an agenda. So therefore, you're actually causing me problems by even coming into me. You're much better off pitching at my operations teams. You're much better off pitching at my kind of like the actual people, it's probably the wrong word, but people at the coalface who actually do the work and fixing their problems, as opposed to trying to get me to, because actually if I pitch it to an operator as an alert, if I'm, pitching my tool, my product, my solution to the operator, and then the operator comes into the L&D team, they'll get behind it and it's easier, right? If you're trying to pitch that solution to the L&D team to help operators be better, it's not going to work. Because famously, I've been in this space as a kind of professional. I'm using the word loosely when I used to use the word professional, but I've been paid money to run learning development departments in massive corporations for many years. And I would always say, it's how do you convince the business? If the business is already bought into something and they're trying to change it, it's going to be a lot easier for you. So just mindful. I would always go definitely to ops. I would go to operations. I would go to CEOs. I would go to like senior leaders and pitch a concept to them as opposed to L&D, because I think L&D can be your biggest blocker. They really can.
Yeah, because what I was going to say to that was that L&D, I would find that they would choose somebody else, but they don't really understand the challenges because they're not doing it every single day of what an operations person does or what a sales person does. They hear these things going on, but they're not going through that pain. But you're saying that they actually, because then my idea is like, how do I get them to understand that actually I've got practical experience of the challenges that those people are facing on a daily basis. But you're saying to go to those people first and then
come back in. Okay. And I would also say it's another, again, my whole life is chance really. And I think because everything we do, 50% is luck, right? I mean, it's not, there is a bit, we can disagree on that, but I genuinely think there's a lot of luck. You put yourself in lucky positions, which makes you more successful, I think, in my experience anyway. But there is always going to be a bit of luck. And, people they may see something in you and you can't turn anything down, even if you don't think you're capable of doing it. I would strongly suggest go and have a go at doing it. I think the harsh reality is that one of the things that really has helped me through luck as much as anything else is that I didn't really come to the world of learning and development until I was in my late 20s, early 30s, right? And even then I came to it by chance. Because I basically got a job running a big country club, and I was kind of transitioning out of hotels and restaurants, and decided that's my daughter had just been born, so I was basically trying to find an easier way to run my life. This is 27 years ago, and wanted to basically get into it's what I thought would be an easier profession. And when I got to that point, then of course on my first day I heard the kind of words I didn't want to hear, which was, there's no job for you, the job has now gone. When you've resigned and you've left your previous company and now you find yourself with no job. But then the owner of that company said, but I'm going to make you head of learning development. My first thought was, I can't do that, but I don't have a choice, so therefore I'll have a go at doing it. But the reason I went onto that thought train was really the fact that because I had probably 15 or 16 years of hotel and restaurant operations experience, when I then was when I went into the learning development role, I was actually a hardcore operator running big restaurants and running big hotels, right? And I kind of knew every sort of nuance of those hotels or those restaurants. So therefore, when I was as a learning development manager then trying to sell ideas about how we could improve guest service, customer service, or how we could improve efficiency, or how we could be better at making our managers delegate better, or how we could I was kind of more plausible. I think what happens is that a lot of people come into the L&D profession, and it's not a criticism of them because I love them to bits, but they come in and they've never worked operational. So if you've never worked operations, you've never worked weekends, you've never worked Christmas days and Boxing Days and Eids, and you've never worked New Year's Eve and stuff like that, you don't really know what it's like.
No.
So back to we keep sort of like circling back, but it's the exposure to that experience. And I know people think, I don't want to do that, Andrew, because I've got better things to do with my life. You probably have. I would strongly suggest that they can get some experience. And it's probably too late when you're 58, but when you're when you're in your early 20s, trying to have a bit of a play and learning new things and getting some experience. And because I was just another conversation I was having yesterday. I think but you don't want to be too flighty. I think I actually interviewed a guy called Elon Musk.
Who's that? Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we were having that conversation about how quickly should I move between job roles.
Yeah.
And what Elon said was actually quite fascinating, because he then says to me, we shouldn't be doing a job for more than 12 months. 12 months absolute top. Yeah. And actually what he was saying is the science is actually backed up. There's a lot of science that backs up what he was saying. The absolute maximum you should be is about 2.2 years.
Okay.
So literally 2.2 years is the maximum. Once you go beyond 3 years in a particular job, you are stagnating. Yeah. So the actual sweet spot, you don't have to necessarily change companies, but you shouldn't be doing the same job for more than 12 months. 12 months is plenty of time to get your head around what the job is, and then basically start learning a new job. And you keep doing that. And I said, the science suggests the world's top performers, if you look at their careers, and I'm far from that, but if you look at their careers, every 2.2 years, they've basically got a promotion. They've got they're rotating, they're getting a new experience.
Yeah.
And that's where it's going to be at. If you just, I know people, I talk to people that they've done the same job for 22 years, 18 years, 19 years, same company.
Yeah.
Right, and they're saying, "Oh, I can't get another job. I'm stuck." No shit.
Yeah.
If you just stay in one industry, I'm so lucky. Luck. Such a broad range of industries I've worked in, which is amazing, right? And when I came to my current employer, I was really freaking out about it, because I didn't think I had the operational knowledge, which has been a major challenge for me. Trying to learn something.
Yeah.
But actually, what's really useful for me is I have this self-given permission to kind of ask the stupid questions, and people actually, because I'm genuinely interested about how something is working within the business. Although I'm considered to be quite a senior leader within the organisation, I can actually say to people, I just don't get that. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is running out of time for me now, if I'm honest. Because they're thinking, you sort of enough now. You should know this shit. But it's at the beginning when you're moving, just not having being the person in the room. Because often I ask questions. Even today, I ask questions in these meetings, and I can see the kind of like, oh, I'm glad someone's asked that question, because people in the meeting are too afraid to ask the question. Yeah. So I go, I don't really get that. Can you explain that to me, please? And then of course we can explain that to you, and they explain it. But everyone else who they didn't know it either. And it was so, but they didn't. They've been doing it for like 20 years, right? So I can't ask that question. I've been doing this for 20 years.
And if we talk about with clients, if I'm speaking to a client and I'm thinking they're getting it, okay, and I've said, do you have any questions? No, everything's fine. They leave the room. They don't feel that they don't want to look stupid.
Yeah.
So they won't actually ask me, what did I mean by that? And I've left the room thinking, oh, there's a good opportunity here. They've left the room thinking, well, I'm never going to speak to them again because I don't want to admit that I didn't understand. And what people tend to talk in is techno babble.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they think they're sounding clever. They think they're sounding smart with all these acronyms and abbreviations. And the person on the other side is like, I've got no idea what's going on here, but I'm not gonna reveal that.
I can't challenge it.
No,
I can't challenge it. No, I completely agree. And I say to one of my kind of top tips for new and aspiring managers is actually getting people to repeat back what you've just said.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's just the greatest investment in your life. I know you don't get time, but you're asking someone to do something. Mark, I need you to do this. Okay, Mark, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I would say 99 times out of 100, Mark looks at me like, I haven't got a clue. Okay, because I'm just assuming, as soon as I've sent the message, the Mark's getting it and he's actioning it, right? But Mark is then going to spend the next 5 weeks trying to work out what I'm asking him to do. Much better if I say, tell him what I want him to do. And then basically Mark says, right, and I said, now Mark, what have you understood? Repeat back what you're now going to do. What are the first steps? I need to do, this is a focus area. Okay, great. what I asked Mark, and actually just getting Mark to then give us a bit of information on, because actually then Mark's going, oh, I'm really glad about that. Yeah. Rather than 5 weeks later, I'm going, Mark, where are we with that project? Oh, I haven't started it yet because I wasn't really sure what you want me to do. Or even worse, Mark's gone off and done something which is completely random. Yeah. Much better off just taking a few seconds. Even in the busiest situation, even if you, even if you're getting shot at, I would strongly suggest before you, unless Mark is an absolute master of what he's doing, and you actually have complete proof that he's the master in this, then that's perhaps slightly different. But 90% of people aren't masters, and they just need to just ask the question, Mark, what have you understood? What are the next steps for you? And people they're just like, oh, I'm so glad you asked me. Let me just, what I wrote down here was this, and this. And then you can then open the dialogue.
Right? Yeah, because they might have heard something differently.
Yeah.
And then you can explain that. And I think going back to what you said before, actually, when somebody is a bit negative to you, you might have said something which they've taken the wrong way. You didn't mean to offend them at all. So with me, I'm quite reserved. Okay. And that gets taken as arrogant sometimes. I've had that feedback before. Like, you don't talk, you don't say anything. I'm listening. I'm trying to understand people. Like I'm analysing them, I guess, as well. But sometimes that comes across as, oh, he's an arrogant douchebag. Yeah. So, but then I have that conversation. But sometimes that conversation never happens, and they go away thinking I'm a douche. I go away thinking, who can I speak to next? But you're right. Having that conversation is really, really important.
Yeah. It's just so simple. But it's so few people do it.
Yeah.
We were talking about, I do a lot of work around, how we build conversations and structuring conversations. And because I'm normally at a very senior level doing this, and I've had situations recently where I'm explaining some basic kind of conversation recipe to how to kind of like probe and to listen. And there's a structure to a conversation, and this is what you should be doing. And we use particular language. And then they're going, oh, it's all a bit basic, Stotts. And I'm like going, well, yeah, but it's the simple things. If you do the simple things really well, it's amazing. And I say, and then okay, let's kind of real play it. Yeah. Let's real play it now. Yeah. And then suddenly they're like, oh my gosh, it seems so obvious. Yeah, but actually trying to do it, because actually at the time, to be able to, you shouldn't really be, thinking of a question when someone's speaking anyway. You should be using a lot more silence. I mean, for me, I'm a big fan of silence. So I would listen to what Andrew's saying, and then I would pause, and then I would, if I need to fill, I would pause with silence. I may even fill with a compliment. I really love it. That was a really interesting point. Mostly because it's giving me time then to think about
stopgap.
Yeah. And then I can ask another question. Right. But actually, what I've also found with team members is if I just don't speak, and they're speaking to me, and I don't speak, they give me the answer. They tend to then give me a lot more information. Yeah. And often the best information is the third or fourth not speaking time. People underestimate silence. They really do. And it's a little bit more complicated than that, because if you just look at, so I'm, intently watching the eye contact, right? I'm watching the eye movements. So you get when someone hasn't got anything else to say, or that they're probably going to say something else. So actually, because you can just, maybe, I don't know how you learn that, but just looking at people's eye contact and their eye movement and where their eyes are going when you're talking to them, it gives you permission to be silent. And it also gives you incredible gravitas when you're silent. But so many senior leaders, when I try and explain that to them, they will basically tell me that this is too basic. I said, well, okay, that's fantastic. It is basic. You're right. A 5-year-old should do this. Demonstrate it to me.
I 100% agree with you.
And then they can't.
No, they can't do it.
And then so they're like going, oh God, can we go over that again? And I'm like going, yes, because suddenly now I've made you aware that you're not aware. So you sort of that you don't know, right? So if you think,
so there's a great thing for that, and it's actually in the beginning of my intro to this. Actually, knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power.
Yes.
And you can read all these books, you can do all this, you can go, oh, that's simple. Now do it, and let's actually see if it works. And people get found out all day long because so many people are just surface level. And once you peel back a little bit, they can't do anything. And it's when you speak about Elon Musk, he was interviewed in Dubai actually by a local Emirati. And he said, like, the power of you is the team around you. He said, how do you pick your team? And he said, well, I understand what their role was on the project. Yeah. And I want them to speak about that project that they delivered. And I can tell whether they were just, the errant boy or they actually had involvement in it. And I think there's a lot of inflated CVs these days with...
Oh, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, but I think that's a really good thing to understand. Like, what were you actually involved in this project? Now tell me. It's simple. We've discussed the role. It's simple. Now tell me actually what it is that we should be doing. And it's exactly that. They think it's simple until you have to do it.
It's. I always talk about knowing, doing, and being. Right. There's three. Knowing stuff is anyone can know anything because you just Google it. Right?
Exactly.
Doing it, i.e., demonstrating the application of a knowledge, is something totally different. There's this massive leap between knowing something and doing something. It's huge. But then there's an enormous link between, or leap, I should say, not link, but leap, between, doing something and being something. Because being, for me, is unconscious competence. So I'm able to do something automatically, and so in certain areas, it's complete mastery. So if I was, because we were joking, but, if I was sitting here showing you how to, it's actually quite, I do a lot of juggling and plate spinning and blue modelling, right? Famously, or maybe not famously, but that's what I do. And I was with Marshall Goldsmith recently, and we were doing, it was a fascinating day, and we were doing plate spinning. We were using plate spinning as more of a metaphor, and I'm not sure if I told you this story before, but literally at the end of the event, it's a huge event, there's about 400 people there, we've got 400 plates and sticks, and they're on the table, but no one's really picked up on it, they weren't aware. Then literally as we finished speaking, I picked up this stick and this plate, and I just went with a tiny twist. The plate starts spinning, right? So people are going, "Wow, it's amazing!" And I then, that's that's really cool. There's obviously plates and sticks on the table, right? And so then there's obviously a lot of activities. People kind of like grabbing these magic plates and these magic sticks, and of course then rather bizarrely, which is what I hadn't predicted, accusing me of being a fraud and of being a cheat, right? You're cheating. You've got like a magic plate.
Oh yeah.
You have a magic
hidden
stick.
thumb or something.
You've got a magic stick. You have a magic stick. This is impossible. What you've just shown us is impossible. I said, it's not impossible. I said, but it does take a little bit of practice. Yeah. No, you have a magic stick. I said, have my magic stick, have my magic plate. And, and of course, this is too difficult. This is much too difficult. And I'm like going, yeah, okay. It's actually, plate spinning is actually a relatively simple thing to do, but it does take a few minutes of practice at the beginning. But like everything. It doesn't matter what it is in life. If you're looking at a master doing something, then of course they make it look simple. So therefore you assume that asking a great question or being a great salesperson or being, or driving a car well or flying a helicopter, you look at it and go, I must be able to do that because that person can do it. The reality is that you don't see the 20,000 hours that goes into learning how to fly the helicopter, right? Or the 20,000 hours that goes into driving a Formula One car. It's absolutely mental. You have to commit. My strong advice, if you want to accelerate your journey to kind of mastery, and I think it's something I talk a lot about, and it's really useful from a learning professional point of view, is I always talk about, there's that kind of line, if you imagine a very, very simple kind of graph with two axes, y and an x-axis. But if I give you loads of reading and loads of support and loads of e-learning, and I don't give you any exposure to it, then it's just, it's really, really boring, right? True. And none of it sticks. No. The opposite, if I just say, right, you're now in front of a customer and you're serving the customer, or you're now flying the plane, without any training, you will learn really fast. You will learn like so incredibly fast. If I took you to like a rock wall and I didn't put a harness on you and it's like 50 feet up and I said, well, you got to climb that up now. And there's no choices. If you come down, we'll punish you in some way. Honestly, Mark, you will learn how to climb that wall really fast. We could give you a load of books on how to do it, and you can watch videos, tutorials about how to climb the wall. Nothing's happening. So any good learning manager, any good learning professional, any good person trying to teach another human being, forget all the kind of profession, but if I want to teach another human being to do something, it's a combination of, a level of stress I'm putting you under to do it, and then basically giving you some tuition on the side to help you. But it's the stress.
Yeah.
When I worked with my previous company, we had brilliant ladies who work with me, but I say to them, let's let them go in the workshop. Let's let them go live in front of a live audience on the first day. Yeah. People are like going, oh, it's suicide. It's like, it's not suicide. It's the best way to learn, because they will absolutely fail. Right? They will absolutely fail.
Yeah.
And then when they're failing, we then pick the pieces up afterwards, and then basically we'll have a conversation about what they need to do. Yeah.
Well, yeah. That's it. I think if somebody feels that there's that support net and you're creating that environment where they can make mistakes, but still you're going to, let's go through this. Let's discuss this. What were your thoughts on this? Then you give insights. And then the next time they get a little bit better.
Oh, much better. They will.
Yeah.
If you just stand off them and you do the work for them.
Yeah. Exactly.
You have to, unfortunately, like in everything in life, there has to be a heavy level of failing.
Yeah.
And you have to fall over. The trick, of course, is to fall over. And then I think it's one of my favourite quotes is a Babe Ruth quote. And he obviously famously said, it's impossible to keep a man down who keeps getting up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
so you can knock him down 8 times, but he gets up the 9th time. Yeah. And that's the thing. So many people get knocked down the first time, although actually, you forget that they're scared of being knocked down. Right? So I'm scared of being knocked down, so therefore I'm not even going to have a go at doing it. Or now I do get knocked down, so I'm just going to stay down. Yeah. When you're down, get up as quickly as you can and crack on. And actually reflect on the experience and think, okay, that was a silly move.
Yeah.
And that's how your team learn. That's how your children learn. It's how you learn. It's really having a go at doing it. It's there's some really interesting. I've got my kind of like I'm scared to go down that route. I've got these kind of like my top 10. Almost like outside of here, I won't do it now. But literally, I've kind of landed on 10 things that will guarantee failure. Yeah.
All right.
Because I think sometimes, you hear a lot of, do these 10 things and you will be successful.
Yeah.
Do these 10 things and you'll lose like 20 kilograms or whatever. Actually, do these 10 things to guarantee failure. If you really want to fail in life, there's 10 things that you need to do, and I'll share those with you.
Yeah, we'll do that, and we'll put it into the comments after, and we can get it. Yeah. I think I just want to say something from that. It's the bounce back ability. With that, it's the time. And if we look at a sales example, okay, somebody's on the phone, client says no to them, they put the phone down. Oh my God, my world's ended. Oh my God, everything's gone wrong. Oh my God, I can't perform, I can't do anything. Their whole day is ruined. The one that has the bounce back ability is one that puts the phone down, walks around the room a second, gets back into the zone and goes, nothing personal, let's go again. And those are the people that you want around you, which can overcome that adversity in that regards. Like, you've got to have a thick skin to be able to get through it. But I do understand when you say that there has to be empathy and there has to be love, but you also have to accountability, which I think is the big word. And people, they don't want to be micromanaged. I completely get that, but they want to know that somebody is going to be watching over them and hold them accountable. And I think that's what people want, Rob. But I just hear people say, no, that's actually not what people want. They just want to have freedom. They want to work from home. We've seen the numbers of people working from home. Most of them can't do that. They want to come back into work because they need to be in an environment where they see someone else that is doing well, and that challenges them. And then that gets them motivated and starts working again.
It was because when you were talking, I went back to my sort of Burger King days.
Okay,
I was head of learning for Burger King that was a great time. My kids hated me being head of learning for Burger King, but I loved being head of learning for Burger King. It was a great period in my life.
Yeah.
They do a really mean burger, but we had the barbecue sauce challenge. So I'm not sure it's a long time ago now for me. But we used to try. Obviously trying to sell barbecue sauce or sell sachets of sauce, like it was 10 fills or whatever, 10. So we used to, and it was trying to get sales, they sort of quick service restaurant, sales teams in restaurants, trying to, upsell the order to a bigger fries or a larger drink or, sauce and that kind of stuff, that kind of stuff. And we kind of landed on that kind of the barbecue sauce thing, because actually if you could get every customer to buy a sachet of barbecue sauce, that's 10, the margin's about 90% and the actual, it's a nice starting point. And also, when we say to people, just ask every customer,
Yeah.
do you want barbecue sauce? Yeah. And some people will say, F off, I don't want barbecue sauce. Some people will just say, yeah, of course, yeah, I'd love it. But it's having the courage to actually ask the question. I think sometimes people are too scared to ask.
People don't ask for the order.
They don't ask for the order.
Yeah.
They don't ask for the signature.
No.
Right.
So
you have to, because you're there. You might. I think that really went well, but I don't want to ask him the question because that's going to spoil my. Do you want the barbecue sauce? Yeah. Would you like extra barbecue sauce? Would you like this? A close question. But seriously, just don't be scared to ask the question. Yeah. At least, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is they'll tell you to F off. It's a shit product, and then you can say, "Oh, why was it shit? Why? What have I missed?"
Well, that's it, and you want that feedback, and you want to know how to improve for next time.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, they may even give you a second chance with that as well. Actually, it was a nice way to get into this. So, if we talk about asking questions, there's a couple of questions I want to finish with now. Okay, what can I do to improve as a podcaster, as an interviewer for next time?
What can you do to improve?
Yes.
Crikey.
Yes.
Do you know I learned this a long time ago when I was trying to get better at talking to ladies.
Okay.
So I was about 14 or 15 years of age, because I've never been good with the ladies. So my kind of top tip is, I've got a very, very simple process that I always do. In my head, when I'm talking to Mark or anyone else on the planet, and I always feel slightly guilty when I kind of admit to my confession here now. But the reality is, it's really, really been a useful tool. First of all, I lead with a sincere compliment.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think if you're leading with a sincere compliment, that's really, really useful. And almost before they can they're reeling from the sincere compliment. And it's really fascinating. So you can just go up to a complete stranger and it has to be sincere. You can't just kind of like make one up. You have to think about, it's more about observations. You have to look at the person, and that's one of the things I do a lot of, is I wear a lot of kind of like visual clues, because I actually find that gives me an in. So, because I dress kind of quite strangely, but I wear sort of certain items of clothing that then kind of draw attention. If it makes sense. But then I obviously, because they're actually, my prey is coming to me. If it makes sense.
Yeah.
As opposed to me going after them. Much easier way of dealing with it. But so I lead with a really good compliment, and I basically then just go straight into my I always call it my TED questions. Tell my discovery questions. So tell, explain, describe.
Okay.
Tell me about tell me about yourself. Just describe what you're up to at the moment. Explain kind of big things that are going on in your life at the moment.
Okay.
So they're great questions, because again you've got that massive open, right?
And it filters
and
down.
then you can obviously, what I would call I do my 4 E's. So the first E is, as we've just discussed, it's a kick-ass, specific, sincere, genuine compliment with a good discovery question, which I call entry. So that's my entry, and then basically I'm then probing experience. So then I probe the experience. So I use my who, what, when, why, where. I tend to avoid why if I can, because I think it's dangerous. But I then probe with my open questions, and then I basically then try to share a little bit about myself, because people like them. So I tend to then use what I've heard from the experience, and I enhance the conversation. So I put in a tiny bit about me, which right now you're finding very peculiar. But then basically at the end, I then engage. So my last E is, I'm then asking for the phone number. I'm asking for the business.
Yeah.
I'm asking for the next step. I'm asking for the
action,
job. Call to action. So if I do my first E, entry, which is my big discovery questions, followed by my big compliment, followed by the big discovery questions. Then I'm kind of listening to the experience. I'm probing the experience. I'm just enhancing the conversation a little bit, and then I'm basically engaging. I'm asking for the commitment, the next step, the phone number.
Okay.
That's my kind of like my top tip, and it's just practicing that.
And one last question to finish off with is, what should I have asked that I haven't asked?
Oh gosh.
There was one question.
What should you have asked that you haven't asked?
Yeah.
How was the wedding yesterday?
Yeah.
Tell us about the wedding. Tell us about the wedding. That was an interesting question.
Yeah, that's what I should have asked. Okay. All right. All right. Look, as we finish up now, I want to say thank you very much. To give you a compliment,
He's a fast learner.
There we go. There we go. Shoes. I love the shoes. Yeah, brilliant. They're really, really nice. So no, I really appreciate your time, energy, and effort for being on the show, and energy especially because I'm an introvert myself. So I know for myself being on here, maybe you're a little bit of both. Extrovert. I do
know. I know. I'm a strong introvert. I'm a big introvert.
Yeah. So this isn't easy for either of us really. So I really appreciate you being on the show, sharing your knowledge. I think most of the community might know who you are, but if you like to,
come and say hi. I'm always open to connections and
brilliant.
contacts.
And I'll put your details in the video, and they'll be able to connect with you. So
Mark, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me as your guest.
Yeah, thank you very much for being on the show. And this is your turning point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.